Hello, everybody. The Lawn Gnome is here, and cue the hallelujah music because we are finally able to get the technology to work on my channel. And it is such a glorious day. As always, it is a pleasure to have you all here with myself and Bryan as we discuss more of the DC animated films on live show number 5. So, Bryan, always a pleasure to have you back. I'm hoping that all has been well with you.
Yeah, it's all been good. Thank you very much. Yeah, bit bizarre being on your channel instead of mine, but there you go.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you know what? We've worked. We've still managed to get this show going, no matter whose channel it was on, and it's always a good thing to just keep the show going, because that's what they say. The show must go on, no matter where it is, and we will just keep on going, talking about DC animated films.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got an interesting grouping today, everybody. So we're officially moving into book 4, as I like to refer to the chronological order that the film is in, but it's going to be an interesting take for the next couple of videos because we're going to be moving around a little bit and picking and choosing certain ones. So there's a good reason as to why, and that's because of the fact that starting in this selection of films, we had a little bit of a changing of the guard. Bruce Timm, after doing The Dark Knights Parts 1 and 2, The Dark Knight Returns, decided to step down and give the helm over to Sam Register as executive producer. So it was all in Sammy's hands at this point in time, and he decided to start doing some continuing stories, similar to what Marvel was doing in the MCU, but with DCU animation. But there were also some individual stories scattered throughout the mix, and that's what we're going to be tackling today before we go into what is now known as the DC New 52 animated movies. So we're going to start off with, I would probably think, one of the most underappreciated films in this library. As a matter of fact, most people even forget that it's part of this grouping, and that is Superman Unbound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It does tend to be one that I think it's a little underrated. I wouldn't say it's classic. I wouldn't say it's up there with your Dark Knight Returns and all that, but I think it's a really solid film. It's kind of, it's one that it's a bit you kind of whack it on for a bit of enjoyment. You know, you kill an hour and a half and don't have to think too hard about it. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's just a good kind of rollicking adventure with a bit of fisticuffs from Superman. You know, and yeah, it doesn't strain itself or anything, but I kind of like it, I've got to say. I recognize that it isn't perfect, but there are quite a lot of things about it that I like.
Yeah, well, one of the few things that I would definitely say is we definitely have a lot of Batman films in this library. So when a Superman or anyone else actually is the main focus of, I'm really curious to see where they're going to go, because when it comes to Batman stories, everybody knows Batman, everybody knows the Rogues Gallery, but not that many people really know too much about Superman. And the whole library of these films, it started with Superman Doomsday, and a lot of people like that one. And then there was a very interesting one like All-Star Superman. Some people like it, some people don't. And that's just neither here nor there. But then you get one like Superman the Elite and versus the Elite, and everything goes crashing down in a large ball of fire. Get a movie like Superman Unbound, I feel that what I like about this movie, because I agree with you, it's a very different film, but at the same time, I think it's very well done. I feel that, unlike a lot of the other Superman films, I feel that its strong points are the rich character development, not just from Superman, but with his relationship with Lois Lane, the development of Supergirl, because it has a lot of moments where Supergirl really is the main focus of the film as well. And also with the villain Brainiac, what's really interesting about Brainiac is the fact that it's very hard for him to really rush in and just have a good old, like you say, a fisticuffs with an enemy, because Brainiac is a very different kind of enemy. He is someone that attacks the mind. His power is knowledge, and it's very difficult for Superman to really adapt and try to figure out how to fight him. And of course, another big positive of the movie is all the other nods to the Superman mythos. You got some of those with All-Star Superman, but here you get things like the Shrunken City of Kandor. You also have the old school Silver Skull Brainiac from the 1980s when everything went extreme, along with Lex Luthor in that green suit that he always liked to wear. So you have a lot of interesting things that Superman fans would really appreciate. But I really feel that the strong points here is the character development and the story itself.
Yeah, I do like. It kind of feels a little bit whimsical at times, a little bit flimsy, but it is there. You know, it's only minor things, like just again that the relationship between Clark and Lois and how they should operate as a couple. It's a bit, in the grand scheme of things, it kind of feels a bit trivial, but it you know, if you like this character, if you gravitate towards Clark and Lois and that whole thing, then I think this is quite rewarding. And they have some fun with it as well. You know, there's that one character from the Daily Planet, and he's always kind of making passes at women and things. And there's one moment where he alludes to the fact that he thinks Clark is gay. It's the only possible explanation for he's always darting off and things like that, and kind of keeping things secret. And yeah, like so. You know, it's not very straight faced. They do have fun with the characters in this one, and I do like that. And I think one of the things with this film getting so overlooked is because I think it's because it's not exceptionally good, and it's not exceptionally bad. It's just really down the midway, and I think because of that, it makes it maybe not that memorable. Like for me, Superman versus the Elite was quite memorable. But that's because of how bad it was. That's because of how many gripes I had with it. So, yeah, this isn't on that level of bad. So it's also not that memorable as a result. But if you sit down and watch it, I think you'll have fun for a good hour and a half.
Yeah. I definitely agree with your take on the character Lombard. That was definitely the comic relief in that respect. I also think that it really goes into Superman's head, which is kind of funny, considering the fact that the enemy is Brainiac. You know, like he's invading Superman's mind, and this is where Superman is really given a test to discover the balances of his responsibility, because he does focus on his relationship with Lois a great deal in the movie, because Lois obviously has feelings for him, obviously cares for him. But what I love so much about the focal point of the relationship at this film is the fact that she wants to have Clark. She doesn't want Superman. Like, and I love the banter between the two characters as well. I think that this is actually one of the better places, probably besides Superman versus the Elite, where the banter between the characters is just fun to listen to. It's like where with the whole thing after where he rescues Lois, they have that argument right after in their apartment. It's like, he's like, I'm always with you. So he goes, when I'm not being captured by terrorists, I'm referring to Clark. Like, I just think that that's really funny.
Yeah, I do. I must say, I'm not overly keen on the voice of Lois in this. Who was it who did a voice in this? I forget. Let me just.
Well, we were going to talk about that soon. It's Stanya Katic.
Right. Yeah. I got to say, I think there's something about her character in this from a voice standpoint that was a bit off. It kind of. I think unless I'm getting confused with one of the others. No, we're not, because this is the only Superman one. So yeah, it is this one.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about Lois Lane, especially in this entire library of films, is the barrage of actresses they've got to play her. They've really tried to be very diverse in regards to Lois for all of these films. I mean, first you had a great performance from someone like Anne Heche, and then in Superman versus the Elite you have Paulie Perrette, and then in All-Star Superman you have Catherine Hendrick. So you have a whole bunch of different people playing her. And yeah, I agree with you. I personally wasn't too keen on Lois's animation. I didn't like the way she looked.
Yeah,
it didn't look like the way Lois everybody's used to actually seeing her. You know what I mean?
Because they did the whole short hair thing, didn't they? And it was a bit, yeah. It felt obvious in the, you know, oh, this is the modern woman kind of vibe that they were trying to get across with her. And yeah, to me, I wasn't that keen on her design or her voice work. And the script, from a script standpoint, I didn't really have that many issues.
Yeah.
I
mean, yeah, they definitely anteed up the snark on her in this one. She was a lot more snarky than usual.
Yeah. I thought like the first time I saw Superman in this, I like literally in my head I thought, man, he's got a long chin. The design, I was like, why the long face? His face is really long in this. It was kind of off-putting.
He literally looked like he dropped a whole bunch of pounds. He's skinnier than normal in this one.
Yeah. But I just like, I couldn't get over how long his face was. But
yeah, it was
so
very,
very
interesting.
Yeah, so I will say that the animation isn't always quite up to scratch on this one. I don't think. Not the fluidity of it. I think it's animated well, but I feel like some of the designs are a little off. But I liked the design of Brainiac. I will say that. I did like how Brainiac came across in it. But I like that story as well. Just this idea of Brainiac kind of acquiring knowledge that becomes his purpose, to acquire the knowledge of any given civilization and then wipe out that civilization, because in his mind there's no longer any purpose for it to exist because he has it all in him. And it's just, but I like the way that Superman deals with that towards the end of the film. The way he says that actually you essentially don't have to take a chance with anything. You don't really have to engage, which makes you weak. You know, you think you've got all of these different societies within you and things, but really you're actually quite weak. So I do like how Superman messes with his head towards the end there.
Yeah, I thought that was a very clever way, because again, like, he fought mind with mind, which I feel was what Superman, to a certain extent throughout the story, he learns a valuable lesson, which is definitely something that we didn't really see much in the films. And it's more about, I think the lesson that's really learned here for Superman is think before you act, because he's trying to be a problem solver. He's trying to deal with his relationship with Lois. He's trying to deal with his relationship with Kara, and he's trying to figure out, how do I beat Brainiac? Because Superman is so used to just going in head first and trying to get in the first punch. He's not like Batman, where Batman's most powerful superpower is his brain. And this is where he actually has to understand that it's not just about using your strength to solve a problem. You've got to use your mind to solve the problem. And that's how he stops Brainiac. He outsmarts him. He gets him to get out of his comfort zone. He gets him to go out onto Earth's surface. He gets him to get weakened through the weaknesses that he has as an alien living on Earth. And that's what I feel is what the main focus of the film actually is.
Yeah. There are a couple of things in this film that have kind of become a staple of Superman in general. You know, when you see stories about Superman, they do irritate me a little bit, like the whole obvious thing, which is whenever Superman disappears for long periods, Clark suddenly disappears for long periods, and no one ever seems to connect the dots, you know. And there's that one moment when Perry White is like, "Where's Superman gone?" And like Lois is like, probably cheating on us, because at that point she's been a bit snarky about him. And then he's like, "Where's Clark?" And he's like, "He's probably cheating on us too." And it's just like, oh man, just why is nobody connecting those two dots? And it's like, but
Well,
they
it's
did it
one
in
of the,
the film Superman Returns, you know, and they do it all the time in the TV shows. It's a bit annoying, but it kind of becomes a running joke, I guess.
it's one of those lives. It's part of the mythos. That's all it is, Brian. It's like we can't break the mythos. It's something that we're gonna even though it's like we live in a world where someone can identify someone through face recognition on a phone. It's like we still are not going to get those little things done in the world of fantasy and comic books and stuff like that. But I do agree with you. It's definitely funny at times. But what I really wanted to ask you was, what was your attitude on Supergirl's role in this film?
I like it. Yeah, I like the way she's brought in. You know, I like her connection to Clark's past, his homeworld. You know, the place he's never been to. I like that she is essentially the link that brings him closer to Krypton. You know, to brings him closer to his parents in many ways. But yeah, and I like that we see her afraid as well. We see, you know, she's a very different kind of fish to Clark, to Superman, because she's a lot younger. And there's a moment where they point it out where she kind of challenges him and says that, you know what, I am actually older than you.
Yeah,
And
that I like.
you know,
I like that line.
yeah, and it's like, and he kind of almost pats her on the head and says, well, yeah, you may be older than me in years, but you're not older than me in experience, because she was frozen for longer than he was, which is why she still looks like a teenager and he's an adult. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
you know, like age isn't just about years, it's about experience, and Superman has experience. And I think they do well showing that lack of experience in Kara, not just with how she feels towards Brainiac, but with how she deals about it in her other walks of life. You know, she goes off to all these other places around the planet, you know, sorting human traffickers out and things like that, without actually dealing with anything back in Metropolis because she can't face it. So yeah, there's a very clear distinction between those two characters and how they deal with things. So I like that. I like the way they play with it.
Yeah, and I also thought that the voice choice of Molly Quinn voicing her was a really good idea. And that's one of the few things that I've really been enjoying about these films. I really feel that this is the second time that Supergirl has shown up in these movies, and I really feel that as a forgotten character who was basically killed off in the comics in the 1980s, to actually have her come back in a very big way, I really appreciate how much they work with this character. And again, I agree with you in regards to what her personality was like, and I think the voice also adds a lot to that. And the same would go for Jonathan Noble as Brainiac. I really, really liked how it was so funny. It was like he was sort of inhuman, but at the same time, he was not human. That's what I really appreciated about Brainiac in this film. It was like you could still like feel as if there was something of a soul in that shell to a certain extent, because you could see how passionate he was about gathering all of that knowledge. And at the same time, when it comes to those who possess that knowledge that he wants so badly, he just doesn't care about them. He just wants them dead. So I find that very interesting about a character like that.
I do like the point that Kara's parents make when her dad says that what Brainiac is doing is essentially a futile effort. Because he says that cultures are living things that are constantly growing, so knowledge can never be finite. Like you're essentially wiping out that culture where it is, but in doing so, you're wiping out all the future knowledge that they will gain, all the future things they will learn. So yeah, it's just this endeavor that Brainiac has. It's just a really twisted one. It's almost like really what he's trying to do is pause the universe and keep it on extended pause. for the rest of time. When you think about it in those terms, yeah, it's just makes Brainiac all the more twisted, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the few things that I've always asked my friends who are fans about the typical comic book villain, because what is it that the typical comic villain always wants? It's either to rule the world or destroy the world. So my main question is, once they get to that point, what do they do after that? Like, they literally cannot go on living. I feel that if Brainiac did exactly what you said, like he absorbed all the knowledge, put the world on pause, well, what's he gonna do with his life after he's finally done that? I mean, I can even go simpler like that. How does somebody feel, like somebody like myself, a collector? How do I feel when I've officially completed the whole set? It's like I feel that there's nothing left. It's like I get upset to a certain degree because I'm like, I'm not searching for that last piece anymore. Like my collection's complete now. There's nothing else to do. It's I guess, and that's what I think makes him all the more human than inhuman.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good commentary on Brainiac as a character, which is that actually the fanboy element is us guys who watch these things, because that's us. We do collect these things, and it's like, well, actually, what do you do when there's nothing left to collect? I think that's when you realize that there's actually a bit of an empty hole in your soul.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've had things over the years where I've collected them, and then I have reached the end, and then they sit there for a while, proudly displayed, and then after a while, I'm like, I don't really feel like I need that in my life anymore, and I kind of get rid of it, and it's just that's the nature of a collector, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things. That's why I feel that as a collector, I feel it as growing as a fan, growing as a collector. It's not, to me, it's no longer about the quantity. Rather, it's about the quality. So I'm always saying to myself, when I want to go, after I've seen like a great movie, for example, I say to myself, do I see myself watching this continuously? Do I see myself really treasuring this kind of a movie? That's the way I feel about it. I say I would only want to have it if I know it's something that I'm going to truly find value in. I mean, like, take Harry Potter, for example. I'm a big fan. The saga's over, and now they're doing. They tried to make a part 8 in a screenplay work that's on that's going to eventually get to Broadway as a play. It's already in the UK. The Cursed Child. There are so many fans of Harry Potter that despise it because they were saying the story is over. You want to give us something more? Go back. Explain some backstories. There's no reason to go forward anymore. The battle is over. Evil has been vanquished. Harry Potter's scar doesn't hurt him anymore. It's like, why do we need to give him? Just let him live in peace. And that's how I feel. That's how I feel as a collector. Like that, you evolve as a collector, and that's the thing I think that Brainiac lacks in. He won't evolve. He puts it on pause, like you said.
Yeah.
So
it's just what does he do? What does he do once the whole universe is on pause? He's just a guy stuck in a room looking at old files of planets. Yeah, it's a bizarre thing. What are there any things in this film that you didn't like? Stuff that kind of stood out to you?
Well, I would definitely say that one of the problems that I had was the character designs. If anything, it was the character design, and also I think it's where we started with the discussion. It's just the fact that it's not great. It's just somewhere right in the middle. And I feel that with all the development that the characters and the story had, I was really surprised they didn't take it one step further. Like, they didn't really turn it into a great movie. I mean, it kind of makes me upset with the fact that they give so much tender love and care to their Batman movies. It's like they try to get to that extra level. They try to raise that bar with Batman all the time, but they never seem to want to do it with Superman, and I never understand why.
Yeah. I get one of the things about this film that kind of bugged me a little bit was the whole where the storyline goes with getting Metropolis. You know, Brainiac shrinks Metropolis.
Yeah.
And there's so many convenient elements to it that I just a little bit jarring. That kind of like up until that point, I was really into this, really getting into it, and then like there's a certain level of suspension of disbelief that for me, I didn't have. I couldn't suspend it anymore, and you know, there's this moment where they take Metropolis up, they pick it up. You know, you see that tractor beam thing coming down, and rather conveniently for the shot that they needed because of the way they wanted to tell the story, they wanted this conversation between Superman and Lois. It's literally this tractor beam, the shield comes down right where the window is that Lois is stood at, right? You know, at the Daily Planet. So basically, the Daily Planet is the very perimeter, very edge of this thing. It has to be because the thing has come down right where that window is at the Daily Planet, where Lois Lane is. Okay, so it gets picked up, gets shrunk, and then when it's in the bottle, Daily Planet is right in the center. You know, it's right in the center of this little thing, so it's inconsistent, and it bugs me. Stuff like that, you know, just where they just decide from one minute to the next where it is because it's convenient for the plot, and then you've got the idea of okay, enlarging it back again, bringing it back to its full size, and he dumps it down in the spot, you know, in this big crater, this huge crater where Metropolis used to be. He puts the little miniature version of it down without making any kind of calculations, any super calibrations to make sure it's exactly right, that it's pointing in the right direction, north is north, south is south, all that business. Blows it back up to its full size again, and it fits like a glove.
But don't you realize? But don't you realize, Bryan? Come on, it's Lois. It's Lois Lane. She's the key. That's what makes everything work.
Oh man! Just look, I can suspend disbelief like the best of them, but all that stuff where they shrink Metropolis and then bring it back again, and it's perfectly in spot. You know, when you think about how they pick, I mean, I get really anal retentive about this stuff. I really do. It takes me right out of the narrative. When you think about how they pick the city up, and then all the rubble kind of falls down into the center of the crater, just that alone would prevent you from being able to just raise this thing back to full size without a ton of buildings coming down. It just, yeah. It annoys me. I hate that it's so easily done. So, you know, it's like at least have a conversation with someone at Star Labs as to how we get this thing back in position without destroying the city and making sure that it's in the exact spot that it needs to be in order to, you know, but no, Superman just puts it wherever and it comes back. Bridges are all connected again, going across to where they should do. It's just basically, it's bollocks. That's all I can say about it. That for me that was my biggest gripe with the film, simply because in that moment I was taken out of it. Because all I could think about was that doesn't work. It's, you know, that's that kind of stuff. It bothers me. It gets under my skin. But beyond that. Yeah, beyond that, I had a good time with this film. I liked Brainiac in it. I'd give it a solid 3 out of 5. I think it's a good film. Like I say, it's not spectacular. It's not exceptionally good, but it's also not bad, and it's not exceptionally bad. It's just right in the middle for me.
I would go a little bit above the middle because the more I watch it, the more I really do appreciate it. I'd probably give it a 3 stars out of 4 because it's a good movie. It's a good watch. It's not it has a lot more positive than negative in terms of the whole package. So I feel that people who watch these movies, I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, your Batman Under the Red Hoods and your Batman Dark Knight Returns and your Wonder Womans, they're great films. But if you have not seen Superman Unbound, you want to see a much deeper Superman story than what we already have so far in this library. It's one that I would highly recommend, especially if you want to see something a little bit different. So let's move on to the next one. And this one was a very interesting one because it was a twist that I didn't really see coming in this library. This is a movie that is based on a popular DC video game franchise, which is the Arkham series, and it's Batman Assault on Arkham, which is apparently supposed to be a prequel to the video game franchise.
Yeah.
So I was interested in this one because it was from what they were saying that it was going to be. The fact that they said that it is a Batman story, yet Batman is not the main focus of the film. This is a film that focuses on the villains. This is the film that focuses on the Suicide Squad. So I definitely have to say that I was very curious to see what they were going to do with these characters. I have to say that one of the other things that I was really excited about was the fact that when it came to Batman and the Batman villains that are predominant within the video game, that they were actually going to use the voice actors and actresses to play those characters. So, of course, we get Kevin Conroy back, and that's always a treat for any Batman fan. But I gotta say, before we get into the plot, I have to say, Troy Baker and Hayden Walsh, who play Joker and Harley Quinn, you never, ever in a million years would guess that that is not Mark Hamill and Arlene Sorkin.
Yeah, I mean, like,
unbelievable.
A bit less so with Harley Quinn. I
Agreed.
I could kind of tell it wasn't Arlene Sorkin, but it was one of those. I do have to check a minute. But with Troy Baker, I'm not even kidding. I was watching this and I was like, I don't remember them getting a Mark Hamill back for this. And it's like, I knew they'd got Kevin Conroy, but I don't remember them getting Mark Hamill. I'm like, but that's Mark Hamill. And then I had to IMDb it, and it was like, you know, while I was watching it, it's like, man, that's not Mark Hamill. What on earth?
Yeah.
That is the single best Mark Hamill Joker impersonation I've ever heard.
Yeah.
If you're not going to get Mark Hamill, then this guy is definitely a good second choice, gotta say.
And the cast itself, I mean, they've got some excellent voice work in this movie. I would probably think that this may be some of Andrea Romano's best casting. I mean, you have Neil McDonough from Arrow as Deadshot, and he was fantastic. Matthew Gray Gubler as the Riddler, who I really, really liked. John DiMaggio comes back, and this time he's King Shark. You've got Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad as Black Spider. Jennifer Hale returns to voice Killer Frost, which I thought was awesome. You got CCH Pounder back as Amanda Waller. Like, you have an all-star cast here. And like we had previously discussed, unfortunately, I think the film does fall a little bit short as a whole package, but its highlights, like this fantastic casting of voices, that does give it a little bit of a saving grace, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of them films where the first time I ever watched it, I was like, "Oh, that was awesome. That was kick-ass." And then second time I watched it, I was like, "Oh, it wasn't quite as good as I remembered, but it's still really solid, good, fun stuff." And then I watched it for the third time, which was just before we decided to do this show tonight, and I watched that specifically with a mind to, get my critical head on, and I must say, it didn't hold up particularly well in the story department, in the writing department. it's still a fun movie. There's still a lot of things in here that are quite fun, quite entertaining. Some of the relationships. I do kind of like Boomerang, just how much of a douche he is.
Oh, he's one of the best parts of the film. I like him.
Yeah, and I see a lot of correlations between this film and the actual Suicide Squad live action movie. Some of them much to my annoyance. I can't remember the name of the guy, the member of the Suicide Squad in the live action version, where he was one of the main characters and they killed him. You know, she blew his collar up.
That's Slipknot.
Yeah, Slipknot. That's it. Now Slipknot, I went into Suicide Squad thinking, no, I don't really know who Slipknot is, to be quite honest. So when they killed him in that, I was like, yeah, could kind of see that coming. If anyone was going to get offed for Amanda Waller to show that she's willing to do what she did, it's going to be that guy, because I've never heard of him. Whereas in this film,
that was interesting.
When they did that with KG Beast, I was like, no way! You took out KG Beast like that? That's really it. KG Beast is done.
I think that was one of the first things that surprised me. I was like, how do you kill off a very popular villain like right away? Like, he may not be that popular to the mainstream, but like DC fans, even people who watched the Justice League cartoon, KG Beast was there. We knew who he was.
Yeah. Does Slipknot have any origins in the DC comics?
I personally don't even think that Slipknot is even a real character. I really do not. Right.
That's it. I mean, and that's my thing. So it had no shock value at all when they killed him in the film. So here, when they offed KG Beast like that, that was actually quite a surprise. And like KGB, I do like KG Beast. You know, he's not top tier villainy. He's not like Joker, Two-Face, that kind of thing. But on the B list section, he's like top of the rung in the B list section. I mean, really
he's even in Batman v Superman. We don't even realize that, but he's in Batman v Superman.
So that really surprised me. But then they do it again. They kill King Shark, another pretty top tier villain, and Black Spider as well. Yeah. Now, so yeah, I'll give them some kudos for doing that. Although, I personally wouldn't have wasted KG Beast like that. Riddler for me in this film is a bit of a mixed bag, because I love the voice acting on him is great, but the way he's written, not so much, because he's the smartest guy in the room when it's convenient for the plot, and then he's dumb as nuts any other time. Like at the beginning of the film, when Amanda Waller keeps him talking so that she can track him, he just comes off as really dumb. And yet you go to the end of the film and he's the only one in the room to figure out that Batman is actually Black Spider.
If I may interject, that is a typical all book smarts, no street smarts guy. That's a typical. There are lots of people like that. They know everything knowledge-wise inside and out, but they can't interact with real life situations or people if their life depended on it. That's a real. I think what I like about that is that's what really gives Riddler his humanity in this story, because he just doesn't know how to properly interact with people. I think that is his major weakness.
I guess so. I mean, I think I can see what you're saying there. I guess it felt inconsistent at the time when I was watching it, but I think I can be won over by that argument. If you want to. The music in this film is terrible. It's really terrible. It's like, and again, this is another correlation I have with the live action film. Not that the music in the live action film was terrible, but that it was overused, really overused. Like you take the first 20 minutes of the live action film, it feels like a music video. But I started getting that same vibe watching this. It just felt like so many times they would burst into action and have this really over the top, fast, kinetic, techno kind of house music like score to it that just didn't work for me.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing happened in the Suicide Squad movie. It's like, why am I listening to the White Stripes in this movie? And why am I listening to the Real Slim Shady or Without Me or something like that by Eminem? It's like, I see where you're coming from. The music is way too over the top, but maybe, and this is just me, you're going to see me playing a lot of playing devil's advocate a lot when it comes to this one. Could it be because they sort of wanted to fit the atmosphere? Like, when you're talking about a story that's headlined by villains, it's anarchy. There is no order. These people will... I don't really want to talk about this, but it's sort of like I have to pull a line from Batman and Harley Quinn. It's like, you'll swing on a dime if the wind changes, or if it's Thursday. Or something like that. It's like, that's why I feel the music, even though it's not good, it sort of fits the film for what it is, because it's supposed to scream, this movie is supposed to scream anarchy. I mean, for crying out loud, they're breaking into a frickin' asylum.
Yeah, I just don't like the score.
I
agree. I'm not arguing that it's not appropriate for these characters, but I just don't like it, and it felt intrusive. So many, I noticed it. That's the problem. And I don't think you should notice a score as often as I did during this film.
I think one of the things that I really didn't like, and we'll go back to KG Beast because he sort of has a role in this whole conversation. I didn't like what I liked about the fact that this movie was going to focus mostly on the villains was the fact that I said, okay, great. Here are some villains that I don't know much about. I know who King Shark is, but I don't know much about the character. I know who Black Spider is, but I don't know too much about the character. Captain Boomerang, Harley Quinn, Killer Frost, and Deadshot, I know them. Yeah. And yet, Black Spider and King Shark are grossly undeveloped. Yeah. Granted, I do like the little relationship that he has with Killer Frost. It's sort of like a Han Solo Chewie kind of pairing, but they are two of the weakest villains in the bunch, and it really upset me because I really liked Black Spider's motives. Like, he will kill somebody. He's a villain because he's a murderer, but to a certain degree, he's murdering for the right reasons. He's killing the murderers. He's killing the rapists. He's killing the people that are doing harm to other human beings. And as crazy as it may sound, there's a little bit of righteousness to that motive. But the fact that they barely even touch upon him in the movie is what really upset me.
Yeah, I always liked the original Black Spider story, for his origin story, his very first story in the comic books. It was drawn by Norm Brayfogle, and I always loved his artwork anyway. But yeah, he was just this vigilante who, his family died because of drugs overdose. Unfortunately, it killed his kids because the drugs were in the hidden cereal box. And it's just, so he took that to the drug dealers. He took it to the streets, and he became a vigilante, and he killed the drug dealers and things like that. So I liked, and then, he's had a few variations since then. Different people have become the Black Spider, but I can't remember which name the original one went by. His proper alter ego kind of thing. His proper identity, I should say. So I can't remember which one he was in this film. I can't remember which Black Spider he was, but it's a lot of that. It certainly fits the original from what I remember about the original one. It is a shame. It is a shame to have characters that people wouldn't know much about. Again, I go back to KG Beast. I think a lot of people probably won't know KG Beast that much. So to have those characters in and then make them a bit dumb, make them stupid, and get taken out pretty early on, it's a bit of a shame, a bit of a wasted opportunity. And it kind of has that Joel Schumacher Bane rapage kind of thing to it,
oh no, we're going there.
And,
Oh, that's terrible.
And that's something I never. I mean, I'm not big into computer games. I must say, I did try playing the first Arkham Asylum computer game once. I've got a friend who really loves them, and he got me to try it, and I couldn't get my head around the controls. I just couldn't. They were far too convoluted for me. I think from what I've seen of it, the story to it and all that lot is really good, and the graphics are really good. But I can't get into the games. But as much as I can see in it that I think looks really good, one of the things I've always hated about the Arkham games is Bane. It's that Joel Schumacher Bane, this skinny guy, this really skinny guy who just suddenly you put all this venom into him and he becomes someone who looks the size of a house. In this case, literally the size of a house. Never mind the physical impossibility of that. The fact that if you suddenly grew that big in that much of an instant, your skin would just tear. But I've never liked the design, and I've never liked when they just turn Bane into a brute force, just a blunt instrument, because he's not that. He never was that.
No,
in the comic books.
No, absolutely. That's what made Nightfall such a great story, because this was not your typical villain that basically just threw everything at him. He watched Batman. He studied Batman, and at the very right moment when he saw Batman at his weakest, he freed all the prisoners in Arkham Asylum. And then after Batman had been tired with himself and constantly trying to nab one enemy after the other, and after the gigantic battle, the comic what had him pit against Scarecrow and the Joker, where he almost kills the Joker, that was when Bane said, okay, it's time to get him, it's time. He played him. He played him, and he toyed with him till the very moment where he knew he was at his weakest, and he did what he did. That's what makes Bane one of the best villains ever.
Yeah, it's one of the major complaints with Doomsday as a villain that a lot of people had. Not me personally. I like Doomsday as a villain. In that original storyline, it was that he wasn't a smarts guy. He was just basically a brute force of nature, and for me that worked with Superman. Somebody who could overpower the strongest man alive. And what worked with Bane is that actually he is on the same level strength-wise as Batman. But what is cool about him is that he's also on the same level intellectually, and that's what made him such a formidable villain. So when I keep seeing them in DC Comics using Bane in this way, reverting to that Joel Schumacher, no brains up here, just a blunt instrument version of Bane, I hate it. I do not like when they do that with Bane. He's not that character. He shouldn't be that character.
And I think one of the other strengths of the film for me is I think the animation style is good, because I really like that they really wanted to make it look like the characters in the video game. Like I like, and that will go to something else that we'll discuss a little bit later. But like I said, you mentioned Bane. They gave the Bane look that Bane's supposed to have in the video game. They did the same thing with Scarecrow. They did the same thing with Poison Ivy. And what I also was very impressed by was the fact that they tried to look at all of these other villains who are not in the game, and they're saying, how can we got to animate them and create a concept of them that looks as though they will fit in this universe. Yeah. And I liked how they gave Captain Boomerang a little bit of an edge with his look, how they did it with Deadshot, how they gave King Shark the big metal jaws. Like, they really made them look as though they belonged in that universe. And that's very admirable. I was very impressed by that.
Yeah, I did like that. I did like some of the character designs. There's some fun moments in here. Just a few little things that stand out. Like there's a moment with Zsasz, who's one of my favorite villains
Oh
actually.
yeah, I like Mr. Zsasz. He's
And
scary.
yeah, I just like there's a bit of a Batman Returns moment when Batman shoots his hook into the wall, and Zsasz is like, "You missed," and then Batman just pulls on the rope, and the brick knocks him out. And that's ripped right out of Batman Returns, and I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that's what that's what I saw, and I liked it. I found that
Well,
amusing.
yeah, I was gonna. We'll talk about. I'm gonna give you my attitude on that a little bit later, but I'd like you to finish your thing first because that's gonna lead into something I wanted to mention later.
Well, that's it, really. That's all I
Oh,
wanted to
okay.
point.
Well, that again, I think was a real strong suit because there's a
Yeah.
lot of surprises in this movie. There's a lot of nods to the Batman mythos. Like, do you remember that scene when they're in the Arkham warehouse and Harley's looking for the mallet and what just happens to fly out? The clown mask from the Dark Knight. You know, that's really cool. So there's a lot of nostalgia for Batman fans to have in this film as well. And I think that that was another one of the strong things. Also, I was curious as to how much of Batman's world we were going to get in this movie. And the scene where the Penguin shows up, I'm like, oh my God, they're bringing the Penguin into this. The fact that the Riddler was a main focal point of the movie, too, I did not anticipate that. The fact that all the villains ran reckless, and the fact that we actually saw some fan favorite villains. And I will say that my favorite look of the character in the Arkham games is Poison Ivy. I love the way she looks in the video games.
Yeah, she's not one of my favorite villains overall. Just because when you bring her into any plot, that plot does tend to get outlandish, which is why in the animated series they cottoned on to this relationship between her and Harley, which
Yeah.
Harley is outlandish and we like her to be outlandish. So when you get those two together, it kind of works.
Right.
But but yeah, here, I enjoy seeing her. She's not in it for too long. Don't get too wacky or anything. But yeah, it's nice seeing these various villains pop up at the end. It's kind of like a who's who of the Batman Rose Garden.
Exactly. I felt that a lot of this movie, there was just a little bit of a nods to the fans, similar to what they did in Superman Unbound with all those things in the mythos. What did you think of the quote unquote, I'm just going to call it the unofficial love triangle between Deadshot, the Joker, and Harley Quinn?
Well, again, that was another beat that reminded me of the live action film. The live action film went that very same route with the kind of love interest between Harley and Deadshot, and then Joker got jealous, and so again I was watching that and I'm thinking, man, there's so many similarities between these two movies, and a lot of people when I look on Letterboxd and I read the reviews and things like that, so many people say about this film, this is what the live action movie should have been. And I'm looking at it and I'm reading them comments and I'm like, this was what the live action movie was, practically. There's so many similarities. So yeah, I think they're probably on the same level. If you prefer animation generally as a whole, go for this one. If you prefer live action generally as a whole, go for the live action one, because to me that they're pretty similar. It's got to be said.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have been saying this for years. I never understood why Warner Brothers didn't put Bruce Timm at the helm of the DCEU. I think that he would have done wonders for these live action films. But what I do like to a certain degree is how much of his work is being taken and being put into these live action films. So to a certain extent, he sort of is like the puppet master of this whole operation to a certain extent, which is kind of good and bad at the same time, because unfortunately the movies have not been turning out to be as good as people would have liked them. Although after Wonder Woman, I feel that there's still lots of room for potential right now, and I'm still praying that the Justice League movie doesn't suck, because we've got Aquaman next year, and nothing would make me happier than to finally see Black Manta in real life on the big screen, because he's one of my favorite villains. I want to see Black Manta so badly. But no, I think it's a fun movie. I think Assault on Arkham is fun. I thought that Batman as a side character was an interesting twist to the whole thing. I still feel that with the small amount of screen time that Kevin Conroy had in this movie, he always brings it 110%. He always does a good job.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Can't go wrong with him in there.
Yeah, and
there's a few more funny moments. Again, like if you come to this movie, I think you can expect to have a good time in the sense that there are a lot of character dynamics and fun moments that make the running time pass by fairly quickly. Like just a few moments, like in the fighting when Batman electrocutes King Shark in the balls. He's got these electric gloves and he punches him in the balls. That's quite amusing. Another moment again with electrocution is when you see when they're all in the chairs at the end and Harley Quinn is like proper digging it. She loves the electrotherapy and she kind of gets quite a high off it. So there's loads of moments like that, you know, that are quite funny, quite amusing. But as many of those kind of moments as there are also ones that don't quite work for me. I think I'm thinking of that moment when King Shark is being driven, for want of a better word, by Killer Frost. She's kind of sat on his back and doing the driving, and you've got this SWAT team who have automatic weapons, you know, and they're firing everything at him and it's not stopping him. And in that moment, I'm like, okay, suspension of disbelief again, whatever. It wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that with a little pistol towards the end, and this is once King Shark has already been killed, you know, his collar's gone off, his head's exploded, and Joker just takes a few pot shots, and you see the bullets from what Joker is firing from his little Pezzy gun, they're penetrating King Shark's skin. You see it in his arm. His arm is getting like holes in it from the bullets that Joker is firing. So you're telling me that little pistol that Joker fires can penetrate King Shark's skin, but all those proper trained SWAT team marksman type people with automatic rifles can't make a single dent on him when he's running straight at them. It's inconsistencies like that, and it just does my head in because it's lazy. It's just lazy, you know. You've not thought it through. You just thought, oh, this will be a funny sequence. How can we get rid of the true danger that's in it? Let's not think about that. Let's just go for the humor. And for me, it just it bugs me.
Yeah. And this is why, I have someone who's a real expert in film working on this project with me. I need those types of people to explain these little inconsistencies, because that's something that the average moviegoer doesn't seem to notice because they don't know about these things. But when you have these people that actually know what they're talking about, you get to see things in a whole new light. Yeah, overall, it's a fun movie. It's not perfect, and I would probably give it a 2.5 stars out of 4 at the end of the day. It's definitely something that has rewatchability, won't lie about that, but if I'm going to rewatch a DC film as the proud owner of all of them, that's not one of the first ones I'm going to go to on my shelf.
Yeah, again, if I don't want to think too much, if I just want something on in the background maybe while I'm doing something else, then this might be the one that I go for, because I know I'm not going to be too invested in it. It's got some other thing, like I say, there's a lot of things that jar with me. Joker, for example, I think he's far too skilled a fighter in this. He comes off like a ninja, and that's not who Joker is to me. He's not a born fighter. He's a dirty fighter. He uses any weapon he gets his hands on. So it's not about how skilled he is with his fists. It's about how dirty he is with his tricks. So when he's going toe to toe with one of the best trained assassins in the world, Deadshot, I'm calling BS on that one. And there's a few times in this as well when Killer Frost freezes people's heads. She does it to this medical examiner. Although why Arkham Asylum is taking in dead bodies, I'll never know.
It didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, it's like a dead bodies. They go to the hospital. They go to the coroner's office.
Go to the
Why are
morgue,
they
yeah.
taking? Yeah, why are they taking in dead bodies to do autopsies? It makes no sense to me. But you know what? Whatever, convenient for the plot. And so yeah, there's a medical examiner there. Killer Frost freezes his head, and it kills him. You know, he falls to the ground. His head. Yet she does the same thing with Killer Shark. He brushes it off like it's nothing. That one I can accept because he's something else. He's not human. But she does it to Two-Face, and he just goes running off like he's been grazed on the face. You know, like he's perfectly fine. Like his head isn't frozen. Yeah, again, convenient for the plot. Oh, we can't kill Two-Face like this, but hey ho. So yeah, as I say, lots of inconsistencies like that, lots of annoyances, but I will admit I did have fun with it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of little moments in it that I can that make me laugh, make me chuckle. I do like the bunch of characters they've stuck together. I just wish it was a bit more coherent. I will give it a 3 out of 5. It's a weak 3 out of 5. But it's a 3 out of 5 nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm just really curious now because apparently there's another Suicide Squad animated film coming out next year called Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay, and I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with this one, because if you said that, and I agree with you, if Assault on Arkham is basically like the Suicide Squad movie, how are they possibly going to be able to make a second Suicide Squad movie with a plot that is nowhere near the same? But I guess we'll have to see. But in the meantime, let's talk about the last movie that we're going to discuss today, and this one is definitely one worth discussing because you want to talk about a movie that is not your typical DC animated movie. Well, Justice League Gods and Monsters is the one. Firstly, we have Alan Burnett and Bruce Timm. Bruce Timm comes back now to be one of the producers, but in this case, he's one of the writers of this film, along with Alan Burnett. So you've got some really good storytellers penning this one, which is great. And Sam Liu has done a lot of work with all the projects as well, but this movie is an Elseworlds movie. They dubbed it an Elseworlds movie. And for all of you who will watch or are watching now who don't know what Elseworlds is, DC Comics in the 1980s particularly started a lineage of comics called Elseworlds, and Elseworld titles are alternate universe DC stories. One of the most popular and one of the most legendary of them in all of comics history is Kingdom Come, which is brilliant. A movie that I would love to see turned, a story that I would love to see turned into one of these animated films, because I think they would do so much good with it. But this is another one of those forgotten ones, I hate to say it, in this library. And yet the more I watch this one, the more amazed I am with it. And I think at this point in time, after seeing it again, this one may be one of the better ones in the entire library.
I'd agree. This is one that keeps getting better for me with each watch. I think because we don't get Bruce Wayne Batman, Clark Kent, Kal-El, the proper Wonder Woman, Diana. I think because we don't get those characters, people, I guess, take it for granted. They're just like, oh, it's one of them, whatever. But actually, it's got a really damn good story to it,
Absolutely.
and regardless of whether or not this is the characters we know, the ones that we love, you look at the first principles of what makes a good film: a good story and good character, character development. And this has got it in spades. It's just really well written, really well pieced together. It's just a damn good movie, and I think you don't need to be a fan of the original characters on which this is based in order to just come to this and enjoy it and accept it as a science fiction story or a fantasy story, whatever.
And it's an exact opposite of a movie like Assault on Arkham. This is not a full-on, in-your-face, action-packed movie. This has a rich plot. This has a slow burn. This is a real thinking man's movie. This movie gives you a lot of things to think about. And that's one of the things that I feel makes this movie so strong, because the Justice League in this movie is their Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. But this is a group of supernatural beings that the public doesn't like at all. As a matter of fact, they live in fear of them, even though they are here to help keep the world in balance and get rid of the things that are doing bad things to others in this world. They are still being closely watched by the world leaders, because the minute that they go rogue, it's Armageddon. Like, they're bringing the humans are bringing out the nuclear arsenal. They're ready to kill them.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of meat on the bones of it. I mean, like, just the personal stories. Like, they deal with these three, and that's one of the strengths as well, because they're not using Bruce Wayne. They can really delve deeply into this different character, this Kirk Langstrom, and how,
who was Man-Bat.
Yeah, Man-Bat, and his backstory, and the same again with Clark. Only he's not quite Clark, and we get a completely different person in the role of Wonder Woman. So seeing these backstories and how they're all interlinked and how it makes them the people they are, for me, is really entertaining, because they're backstories that we're not used to. I mean, like, how many times have we seen Batman's origin story? How many times have we seen the parents being murdered in the alley? It's one of the things people are like, oh, if they do another Batman movie, please don't show us that again. We don't need to see it. But they don't have to in this, because he's a completely different character. And again, like I say, it's one of the film's strengths, because you're drawn into these characters because they're familiar, but they're not familiar. And I really like, of the three, I'd say the Superman backstory is probably the weakest of the three, though I still do enjoy it. I think the Man-Bat stuff, I think Kirk Langstrom's story and his relationship with those people is probably the strongest. It's probably the one I enjoy most. But I also really love the Wonder Woman stuff.
Absolutely,
the way they've changed, the dark side and the new gods, and
the dynamic is completely flipped around, and that's what makes it. And that was so interesting, because that was very unpredictable. Like, I really did not see that coming.
Yeah, no, it was really good. But
and I also like how the origin stories are scattered throughout the film. I mean, as you said, the Superman one is the weakest, but that's why it's the first. That's why it's the opening sequence of the story. And truthfully, Superman's origin story is probably the least complex. So they just did two little different things. They basically, instead of making him the son of Jor-El, they made him the son of General Zod. And instead,
I gotta say, just before you move on, there's a line of dialogue when that happens that just it really made me laugh, which is when Zod goes over to the capsule just before he blasts off, and he says, he's talking to Lara, and he says, "Upon your egg, I bestowed my eminence."
Yeah, that is kind of funny.
Which is really disgusting. It's it's basically a really polite way of saying, we don't need to go there anyway. But...
Yeah, I know exactly where you're going. But and the second part is the fact that he doesn't crash land in any town USA being adopted by Pa Kent. Rather, he is found by illegal immigrants on the southern border, and the fact that he's actually raised by a Spanish family. His name in the movie, we don't hear this, but according to IMDb, his real name, his alias, his name is Hernan Guerrera.
The
fact that he speaks a little Spanish in the movie is cool too.
When it first happened, when we first found it out, I was a bit dubious. I was a bit worried because I was like, oh man, this could be so easily misinterpreted as being very, very racist. It's like, you know, if he gets found by the white middle class family, he grows up to be Superman. You know, where he's found by Mexican immigrants, he grows up to be a real piece of work, you know.
Dare I say it, it gives an extra dimension to the term illegal alien in this case.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, but it's interesting. I think that it adds a little bit more to the character himself. And I also do like the voice casting of Benjamin Bratt. I think that what I also like about the characters, especially the three main characters, is how bitter they are. It's like they know that they're not liked, but it's like, but we're going to do the job anyway because that's what we are. It's like no one else can do this, so we're going to do it ourselves.
And they're really brutal as well. Those first scenes we see them in as the team, and they go, they go into that factory and they take out that group, and they're they don't hold back. Some of that stuff is pretty brutal that they do.
And it's not just the main characters; it's the whole group of people around them. Like, you thought that Lois Lane was snarky in Superman Unbound. She is nothing but snark in this movie, and I like that she is a very, and that's the other thing. Like, she's not a tall, strong-looking woman. She's actually a small woman who looks like she could be snapped like a twig. But my God, you lift up her skirt and you're going to see a pair of brass balls on that woman. Like, she took no crap from anybody. Like, I love the fact that she stands right up to Superman and she's like, just try and do something, buddy, and I've got your number. I loved that about
her. And we get Killer Frost again in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's one of the so we have Killer Frost, Blockbuster, and Cheetah, or a variation on Cheetah. And,
exactly.
Yeah, and they just kill him. Kill all three of them.
Exactly. So it was all and also there's the other famous characters in the DC world that we see in a different light as well, like Victor Fries, which was a big surprise, which I was really impressed by. But you also had Jason Isaacs as a very interesting version of Lex Luthor. I really liked that, and I liked the small role that the Atom has in this movie.
Yeah, definitely. Ray Palmer.
Yeah, and there's also, if I'm not mistaken, Bumblebee is in this movie too. She's one of the people that is afraid of getting killed.
Oh, right. Okay. I think I missed that one.
Karen Beecher. She's one of the characters, and that is Bumblebee, and also Livewire's in the movie too.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think this is one of those films that if you're steeped in DC Comics lore, you're going to get a lot out of it. It's not necessary to enjoy the story and to kind of go along with it and be invested, because I didn't know who the main villain in this.
We'll talk about William Magnus.
Yeah, so William Magnus, who's the main villain in this, or turns out to be the main villain in this. Like, if you knew because when I saw this film for the first time, I didn't know who he was. I didn't even know if he was someone from the comic books or not. So I was just like, whatever, I'll go along with it. So because I know Man-Bat, I know Kirk Langstrom, obviously, because I'm a big Batman fan. But I don't remember Will Magnus playing any part in the comic books. in Kirk Langstrom's story. So I'm like, is this something I'm not clued in on? You know, is this some reference that they're getting that's really obscure or what? So after that first watch, when I watched it a couple of years ago, and then I came back to this watch. Before I sat down to watch it this time around, I did some reading up on Will Magnus. And yeah, there's this whole history in the comic books of him creating these things called the Metal Men. And knowing that piece of information, going into the film again, you could predict quite easily who the villain is in this film if you have that piece of information. Given what's happening, we have these 3 different robots that go around killing all these different people. One looks like Batman.
And they're trying to frame the Justice League.
Yeah. So if you know who Will Magnus is in the comic books, you can pretty much guess where this film is going. So I like that. I like that actually to, when I had those different perspectives each time watching it. First time around, as someone who didn't know this character, it was a surprise. And then the second time, knowing, obviously knowing where the film's going, but also knowing who this character is in the comic books and how that made this stuff in the film make sense. It was just, it was quite a rich mythology, I think, for the film.
Yeah, I really appreciated like I said, it was also the rich character development on the villain as well. I mean, if you weren't someone who was able to read so deep, you probably wouldn't have guessed, because if you didn't figure it out, it would just make the reveal all the more angering, because this was Kirk Langstrom's friend.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing when it comes to any storytelling, when a friend stabs a friend in the back, that is always a heartbreaking moment.
Yeah, it always adds a new level to the villainy, doesn't it?
But I do feel that one of the problems that I had with the film is, unfortunately, the reason why William Magnus did what he did. I said the same thing about Baron Zemo in Captain America: Civil War. I just don't appreciate it when the motives of the villain are just so simply selfish. I mean, I appreciate it when a villain has selfish intentions, but if the reason why you are wanting to destroy your friend is because of the fact that your wife liked your friend more than you, I don't know. There are as someone who has seen jealousy from friends, this is not the way to solve that problem. There's a much more mature way to solve that problem.
I don't feel that is his only motive. And also, I think that his motives have been skewed over time, because it's not like he's formulated this plan in overnight. And he killed his girlfriend in one brief moment, and it's that moment that changed his life.
Yeah,
and exactly. I think from a psychological standpoint, he had to reason that in his head. So there's 2 ways you can go about it. You accept what you've done, which is to have killed someone, and you do the right thing. You hand yourself over to the police. He couldn't do that, for whatever reason in his mind. He couldn't allow himself to hand himself over to the police. He couldn't own up to what he'd done. And when you get in that frame of mind, guilt has to be stamped down by something else, and invariably that becomes hatred. And in this case, he projected that hatred onto Kirk Langstrom. So I don't think it is a simple motive. I don't think it's a really dumb motive. I think it's a nice handling of the character arc, because he says, doesn't he, later on in the film, I killed her the first year into our marriage, and it's like he's been living with this for years. And I think guilt compounded by the hatred that he's using to cover up that guilt, I think makes for quite a complex character. And The same with Baron Zemo. I loved Baron Zemo, actually. I thought he was one of the strongest villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, precisely because, yeah, he was a lot more grounded, and it's not just a revenge story. It's not just, oh, my family died, so now you must all pay. It's a political one as well. You know, he's not just thinking about his family. He's thinking about the world in general. He's looking at these all-powerful beings and thinking, this is too much. You guys just have too much power, and it shouldn't be allowed. It can't go unchecked. Someone has to bring you down. And you know, and that's a process that takes time. It's a psychology that takes time.
Well, maybe if he would have just put on the pink jumpsuit, I would have been completely okay with him. He needed that pink jumpsuit. I don't care what anybody says. He needs that pink jumpsuit with a leopard trim. He needs it. Sorry,
there's no way they could make that look good.
It's that's the fanboy in me, and it's gonna come out no matter what. And I mean, I love Daniel Bruhl too, but yeah. But anyway, I also think that one of the other things that didn't make sense to me was the New Gods and Apocalypse. I'm like, this is an Elseworlds title. Everything is different. The atmosphere is different. The look of everybody is different. Why do these people look exactly the same as they do in Batman the Animated Series? Or, I mean, Superman the Animated Series.
Because some things can be, you know, some things might be the same. You're talking about strands that in this world are different. Well, maybe in this world, the only thing that is different is the fact that Zod is the one behind Superman. And that created a butterfly effect, which affected Earth because obviously Superman went to Earth, and that's affected everything else. But everything else outside of Earth may not have been touched in the same way. Those ripples may have been very minor as a result of that. But it's alternative universe stuff, innit? You can do whatever the hell you want.
But to its credit, it does play to its advantage because it's like, here are these beautiful, godlike, clean-cut people. And then here are these ugly, hideous things in Darkseid, Steppenwolf, Granny Goodness. Wait a minute. Why is the guy that looks like Moses decapitating somebody? Like, why is this happening? So, like, I guess to his credit, it adds to the shock value of the twist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just things that some things are different, some things are the same. Some things look the same but actually are different. Some things look different but actually are the same. And that's what I like about it. One of the things I like about it.
Well, I will definitely say that. Okay, what were you going to say? I'm sorry about that.
I just wanted to point out one particular sequence, which was the whole Ray Palmer sequence. And it starts off with him talking to who is it he's talking to? Ray Palmer's talking to someone, one of the other scientists.
Right.
But he's talking about his technology that he's developing. Obviously, the shrinking.
Yes.
He says it's. Let me just read the quote because rather than trying to memorize it in my head, but. So yeah, he says molecular miniaturization, a big solution for a shrinking world. There's actually a film coming out now called Downsizing, and that's seriously, that is what downsizing is. It's exactly the principle that they're talking about here, which is that actually if you could shrink us all, we would actually suddenly have a shed load more resources. We would, our resources would be exponentially increased because we wouldn't need to use as much. So the sequence starts off with this big, ambitious idea that could change the world, that could really make a difference. And he's got in his car, he's got this very thing that he's shrunk, which is this little horse.
Yes.
And I like the way the scene is bookended. And, you know, he goes through this disaster. He gets attacked by one of these metal men.
Robots, yeah.
He gets killed. Ray Palmer gets killed. And suddenly all those bright ideas, all that ambition, all that possibility to change the world is snuffed out. And the final shot we see in the sequence is this wolf or coyote or whatever it is with the little miniaturized horse in its mouth. And I just thought that was a really nice touch. Is really well written. Just that whole sequence, the way it, you know, presents these ideas, presents the hope that this guy offers to the world, and then the way that actually those hopes are completely swallowed up, like a miniature horse in a coyote's mouth at the end of it. I they didn't have to do that, you know, and I think it just feels like some thought has gone into expressing those ideas just within that sequence.
Well,
you get a beginning, a middle, and an end, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the few things that I would say overall. I mean, one of the few things is just having this discussion with you. It's making me very eager to watch the movie again, because I think that one of the things that is also very impressive is that this also, I think, is the darkest film until we got The Killing Joke. But in terms of likability, let's be honest here, we'll talk about The Killing Joke very soon, but I feel that while we have some really dark films in this library, like Batman The Dark Knight Returns and Batman Under the Red Hood, and even one that we'll be discussing next time, which is Justice League Flashpoint Paradox, the fact that you were able to go as dark as you possibly could, and you didn't necessarily have to push any serious bars. Like, they still kept they kept it really dark, and they still held it at a PG-13 rating. That just shows you that it's the writing and the overall story that gives it its staying power and makes it as good of a film as it is. And I think that's a very strong suit. Bruce Timm, you know, coming back, he couldn't have picked a better thing to make. It really is one of his greatest pieces of work, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally not one for these kind of stories. I don't tend to like these, you know, alternative reality stories, because like the way I see them, they don't really have any impact within the broader scope of the actual characters that we know and love, you know, because it's an alternative universe. Once it's over, boom, you know, you could wipe out that universe, so what? It has no bearing on the actual, you know, Earth One, if you want to call it that. So yeah, so to make me feel invested as I do with this film, I think that really is a sign of great writing. I just think this is quite a brilliantly written animated movie.
I agree with you 100%.
I've just noticed on my notes. I did think when I said it before, to be honest. So I will take back what I said. The Lois Lane that we got voiced in Superman Unbound, I didn't have a problem with. It was the Lois Lane here that I had a problem with. I just noticed.
Oh, okay. I really like this Lois Lane, honestly.
Right. No, Padgett Brewster, I really didn't like the voice. So it wasn't the one from Superman Unbound I had a problem with. It was because I watched these the 3 movies we've discussed tonight. I watched them kind of consecutively over a few nights. So a few things got warped in my head. But yeah, I didn't like the voice of Lois Lane in this one at all.
Okay, I mean, Padgett Brewster has worked on them before. I mean, she is Poison Ivy, so that is definitely an interesting take for her. No, I really like this Lois Lane because I just felt that she fit with the story very well. Like, I really appreciated the fact that she was just as bold as guys in the film like Steve Trevor who stood up to the Justice League, and yet at the same time, while he does stand up to the Justice League, you can tell that to a certain extent he's quivering in fear. But Lois Lane just has no fear.
Yeah,
that's what I liked about her.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's not the way the character's written. I think the way the character's written is perfectly fine.
Just the voice, yeah.
It's just, and again, it's not that Padgett Bruce is a bad actress. I think her voice works for someone like Poison Ivy. It doesn't work here, for me personally, for Lois Lane.
But
there's a couple of more things that for me just stopped this movie getting the perfect 5 out of 5. Not to blow my my score so early, but there's one minor thing is just when we go back to the early days of Kurt Langstrom and Will Magnus at the university, their character designs are really similar, like almost identical. And at first I had trouble telling them apart. They both had the same hairdo, both the same color, but like I say, not a major thing. Like once Kirk Langstrom starts getting ill, they make him more gaunt.
They make his face more bony, yeah.
Yeah. And from then on, I have no trouble with it. But when we're first introduced to them, he has the flashback, and we see him. I'm like, we've just got into a flashback, but which one's Kurt? Because he looks identical to that. So it was just a little moment of confusion just because of the character designs, which they could have done more to distinguish. And the other thing is this plan, to wipe out all these people. Lex Luthor is on that list.
Right.
We know that because towards the end of the film, the robots target Lex Luthor. They go after Lex Luthor to kill him. Why the hell was he not the first target? Because if they'd have killed him first, one, he wouldn't have had the information to share with Superman. So Superman wouldn't have known what was going on. And two, no one would know anything had happened. So you kill Victor Freeze on Earth, an investigation is going to be made straight away. You kill Ray Palmer because it's on Earth, people are going to know about it straight away. That's going to bring attention. You kill Lex Luthor up on that spaceship where no one even knows he's there. No one knows he's there, so there'd be no investigation.
But then there's the problem. Here's the thing. He's also going to be the hardest one to kill.
All the more reason to try and get it out of the way first, because if you take him out, then your job is practically done.
You know what I think? I truthfully believe that Lex Luthor would have known how to stop the robots before they even laid a finger on him. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just saying, well, okay, if I want to go basic, you go the easy route, there's no movie. End of story. That's the way I always look at it.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a minor gripe, okay?
Yeah, I understand.
You could just if you could just as easily say that Magnus thought, well, Luthor ain't going anywhere. He's up in that tower. I'll sort these guys out and then I'll get to him. But like I say, very minor gripe. It's just something where when I was watching it, I was like, if I was Magnus, pretty sure I would have got rid of him first. Because if I had done, he wouldn't be sat here now having this conversation with Superman, giving all this information. And then conveniently, just after he's given that information, then he gets attacked. And it's like, yeah. But like I say, other than that, this is a really strong movie.
Yes,
so I'm ready. I'm ready to give my final thoughts on the score, but if you've got anything else to say.
Now, the one thing that I also thought was a little bit of a treat, and I didn't really throw it out right away because I didn't find the place to do so. I also love the fact that when it comes to these movies giving us alternative stories, I love who they pick to be the presidents. I mean, first we got Slade Wilson, and now we have Amanda Waller. I just think that that's just icing on the cake for me. I really did like that. And I also did like all the other names that were scattered around the film, like John Henry Irons is there somewhere or another. You know, Steve Trevor has a role to play. You have the Stones, which I thought was pretty cool as well. There's a lot of amazing stuff in this film. So yeah, I'm ready to give my final score on this one as well. I feel that it's different, and I think that because of the fact that it is so different from all these other films in this library is what makes it really special. And I feel that the writing is what sells it. And I personally would love to see them make more Elseworld titles. I feel that those can really be some of the better films that they make in here, which is why I think we have a lot of high hopes for Gotham by Gaslight, because that also is supposed to be an Elseworld story.
Yeah, it's one of the first graphic novels I ever read, and it did kind of stick with me. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm probably going to give this one, again, I also understand that with its imperfections, I don't think it's full-on perfect, but I feel that the more I watch it, the better it will get. But for now, I'll give it a strong 3.5 stars out of 4. Very strong, very close to 4. If I could give it a 3.75 out of 4, I probably would, but that's not how my rating system works.
Okay, yeah, I pretty much just everything we said. I think it's a really strong story with great character development. I particularly felt tuned in to Kirk Langstrom and his story, and I enjoyed the Wonder Woman side of things quite a lot. Yeah, just very intricate, a lot of characters, really well handled, a lot of elements from the comic books that work if you know them from the comic books, but also aren't so fundamental that they don't work if you don't know, who these people are. So yeah, just a really good, solid, all-round, great comic book movie.
Absolutely.
Like I say, those few minor quibbles do let it down 0.5 star, so I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5.
All
I think
right.
this is one of the best we've had.
I
in
agree.
the series so far.
And it's really funny because when I first saw it, I really didn't think it was that great, but I feel that
it's a grower.
Very few of these films for me have that kind of growth every single time, and I think it just increases the rewatchability. I personally still say that Batman Under the Red Hood is my personal favorite at this point in time, but maybe this one will surpass it. It has the potential to do so. But anyway, everybody, that wraps up our episode today. It was a pleasure to work with you again, Bryan. Always great. Once again, Melissa's unfortunately MIA at this point in time, everybody. She's got school and she's got work. I haven't even spoken to her in about a month, but I'm pretty certain she's alive somewhere doing her thing, which is good. But we've got a really exciting episode. It's going to be a while because we got to wait a little bit for the next DCAU film to come out. But we're going to start talking about the New 52 universe that was created in this library. So next time we get together, we're going to be talking about Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox, Justice League War, and Justice League: The Throne of Atlantis. And I'm really excited to rewatch these films again because there's a lot of fun to be had with them and some very big surprises as well. So all of our information will be in the box below, including our channels and our Twitter feeds. And Bryan, I will be sending this to you as always for your channel once I add the finishing touches. But before we go, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Anything else before we head on out?
No, just always a pleasure. Head on over to my channel if you like Batman in general, because I do a lot of Batman related content. I'm also reviewing every episode of Gotham if that's of interest to you.
Yes, I've been
But
seeing those. Yeah, I'm just And I'm just really excited when we eventually tackle the second series of films, which includes the Adam West Batman animated movie. I think we will have some serious fun with those. But anyway, everybody, once again, thank you for watching. Comment in the box below if there's anything you guys want to say. I hope you all enjoyed. And with that, I bid you all a good night or good morning, wherever it is in the world you are right now. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video, or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.